Hi, good morning. I'm going to make a gingerbread house and take you along with me for the ride. Gingerbread houses are challenging, but they're really a lot of fun. So it starts with gingerbread dough, which you can use to make the house, or you can use it to make cookies too. If you have leftover dough, you can make cookies. So the ingredients are flour, brown sugar, baking soda, and baking powder, both. A little bit of salt, cloves, ginger of course, cinnamon. This recipe has lemon zest in it, and that gives it a nice flavor. Molasses, vanilla. If you don't have brown sugar, if you're not aware of it, brown sugar is white sugar that has the molasses removed from it. So if you don't have brown sugar, you can just add an extra teaspoon of molasses and use white sugar if you need to. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to take 3 cups of flour, and the best way to measure flour is to scoop it and then level it off. So I'm going to measure my dry ingredients right into this large measuring cup. It's a 4-cup measuring cup, so I know that I'm going to have room for the 3 cups of flour and my my spices. So the dry ingredients are the flour, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1 3/4 teaspoons of cinnamon. So that's the cinnamon. You don't use as much cloves, and some people don't like cloves. If you don't like it, don't use it. I think it only takes 1/4 of a spoon of clove. And we need a tablespoon of ginger. And if you like it spicy, add more ginger. Then we're going to use, let's see, 1 1/2 teaspoons of baking powder and 3/4 of a teaspoon of baking soda. So this is the baking soda. Again, I'm leveling it off in here. So I have everything in this measuring cup, and I'm going to stir it around. So now I have my dry ingredients ready here. In the mixer, I'm going to put butter, sugar, cream them together, and then I'm going to put the egg in and mix that. So those are the wet ingredients. In case you didn't know, sugar is always considered a wet ingredient because it dissolves in the liquid. So I'm going to put the brown sugar in. I've already put my stick of butter in here. When you measure brown sugar, you should level it and kind of tap it in there. So I'm going to, there's 1/4 cup. We're going to use 3/4 cup, so I need 3 of these 1/4 cup measures. And I'm going to start this up. It's going to be a little noisy. I'm going to start it up, and then I'm going to come back when it's mixed with the egg in it. You want to stop your mixer once in a while and scrape down the sides to make sure that everything is getting incorporated. Depending on your mixer, you know that some of them stuff gets stuck on the bottom, so you want to make sure that everything is well mixed. And if anything is stuck on the beater, make sure that you knock that off too. Give that one little additional mix, and then I'm going to add in the molasses. Okay, that's good. So now we're going to add in the molasses and vanilla and the lemon zest. So I have my 1/2 cup of molasses in here. I'm going to add my 2 teaspoons of vanilla. It takes a little while to for the molasses to come out of the jar. If you're in a hurry, you can put it in the microwave for a little bit to kind of hasten it, but you know what they say, slow is molasses. There's a reason why they say that. So now I'm going to take some lemon zest. Lemon zest is the very outside part of this. You don't want to go to the white part. The white part is called the pith, and it's bitter. So we just want the part that is fragrant and has a wonderful taste to it. So I'm going to I'm using this microplaner, but if you have a grater of some other kind, you can use that. This works real well though. These microplaners are really good for grating cheese and other items too. So lemon zest adds the flavor of lemon to things without any of the acidity. You can add it to a lot of different kinds of recipes. It's really good in sugar cookies. So, and of course the lemon is still good. I can still use the lemon juice in my tea. So I have this lemon zest here. It smells wonderful. So we're going to put this into the mixer and continue mixing this. Until it's incorporated, and then we're going to add the dry ingredients. When you start this back up, start it slow so everything doesn't come flying up in your face. Okay, and again, I'm going to stir this. I'm going to scrape the sides of the beaters down, of the bowl down. Make sure that nothing is sticking to the top of the beater bar. And then I'm going to start slowly adding the flour and dry ingredient mixture. And making sure that most of it is incorporated before I add more. Take too long to mix it in. And then I'm going to scrape this all into a ball, and I'm going to put it in a plastic Ziploc bag, put it in the refrigerator for at least 2 hours, and then we can roll out the dough. Okay, so I've kind of rounded up my dough here, and I'm going to just grab this Ziploc bag, and I'm going to take the whole mess and put it in here. A little bit more. There's no saving some for Mr. Manners in here. You want to get it all because, you know, there's a cookie left in here. So this has to go in the refrigerator, like I said, for a couple hours at least, but you can leave it in there a couple days, and you can freeze it. So I'm going to zip this closed. Remove the air, and then I'm going to flatten it because it'll chill faster that way, and it'll be slightly easier to roll out later if it's already flat. So I'm pushing the air out of the bag. And there we go, I'm going to put it in the fridge. So I've taken the dough from the refrigerator, and I'm going to roll it to about 1/4 of an inch thick. I'm rolling it onto right onto parchment paper because while I usually bake with Silpats, I don't want to take a chance since I'm going to cut this with a stencil. I'm not going to, I don't want to cut my Silpats, so I'm going to flour the parchment paper a little bit so it can move around. I'm going to flour the top of this, and I'm going to roll it to 1/4 of an inch. Now there's lots of kinds of rolling pins. This is a French rolling pin. This is great for rolling most things, but it just so happens that I have one of these rolling pins that has the thickness in these little discs. And so I've used the ones that are marked for 1/4 inch. So I know that when I roll this out, it's going to be uniformly thick all through. So I'm going to roll this till it mostly covers this sheet, and then I'm going to take these stencils that I've cut, and I'm going to cut out the pieces before I bake them. So that's something that some people wonder about. Do you cut them before you bake them or after? And there are people who do it both, you know, either way, but I prefer to cut them before I bake them. So that's 1/4 of an inch thick, and this is just about big enough for the biggest piece here. So I'm going to cut that out with my little knife. You could use a pizza roller to do this, or a knife. I'm actually using the back of the knife because it doesn't have to be super sharp. It just has to cut through the dough. And I'm going to take those scraps and re-roll them. So that's what this piece looks like. This is the largest of the pieces. So I'm going to cut one of these with the holes in it, and then I'm going to cut one that's going to be just plain, so that'll be the back of it, because we don't need the door in the back and the front. I'm going to cut 2 of the side pieces that have the windows. These are the roof pieces. I'm going to cut 2 of these, and then these are the pieces for the chimney. So you don't have to put a chimney on if you don't want to, but they're cute. So I'm going to re-roll the dough. And to make this gingerbread house, I've used 2 full recipes of the gingerbread. It takes quite a bit. If you want to, you can make the roof a little bit thinner than the 1/4 inch because it's not a weight-bearing part. But the sides, you do want to be sturdy enough to hold up that roof up, because the roof is going to hold quite a bit of candy, so you want it to be very sturdy. And if this gets sticky, which sometimes it does when you work with it, when it warms up, you can add a little flour. Just make sure that you mix the flour in pretty well. And if it's really a problem, you can stick it back in the fridge for a while. And if you don't want the interior of your gingerbread house to be visible, you don't have to cut the windows out. You can make little score lines on them and then later decorate them with the frosting. I like to leave the interior visible, and then usually what I'll do is I'll fill it with candy. If you hear these little flappy noises while I'm making my videos, it's my dog coming in, checking things out and shaking herself down. Just making sure she's not missing out on anything important. Then I'm doing the final rollout. I was using my French rolling pin, which I think is a little faster for some things to start. And then when I get close to my thickness, I check if I'm using this rolling pin that has the discs in it that give me the exact thickness that I want. And if it's not quite big enough in one dimension and it's a little too thick in another, I can just kind of push it with my hands like that, and then when I give it that next roll, it's going to be closer to the dimension that I need. See, that way now that fits on there. So I have my two sides there, I have my front and back. Now I'm going to do the roofs, the two roof pieces, and the chimney. This is one piece of the roof. If you have a little bit of flour sitting on the top, you can kind of just gently massage it in so that it's an even color when you finish baking it. And the last thing we're going to do is cut out the little chimney pieces. And again, chimney is optional. It can be a little tricky to put the chimney on. And you can make the chimney pieces a bit thinner if you want to, because again, they're not weight bearing. This is a nice dough. If it tears, you can easily push it back together. Some kinds of doughs are not as forgiving that way. If we can fit them. So I'm going to bake these now at 375 for about 10 minutes until the edges just start to brown, but they're not looking at all burned. So I'm going to keep my eye on them. And we'll come back when they're baked. Let's check and see if these are done. And when I put these in, I put them in for 4 to 5 minutes, and then I alternate the pans so that they get the same amount of time on the top and the bottom. And I'm going to carefully remove them to the cooling racks. Smells great. There we go. Everything's baked now. We're going to let these cool, thoroughly cool. or you can freeze these and decorate on another day. So when they're cool, these just came out, so I'm not going to touch these because they're fragile when they're right out of the oven. These have been sitting here for 10 minutes while these baked. So I'm just going to take a spatula, a turner, and go underneath this and make sure that it's going to release, because sometimes they can be a little bit stuck to the paper, and you do want to make sure that it's going to come off. So that's going to release. Check this one. That's good. We're going to wait a few minutes for those, and then we'll come back on another occasion and do the decorating. We're going to make the royal icing that's going to hold the gingerbread house together. It's kind of like a glue. It's a very hard icing, and it's edible if you use meringue powder. Back in the old days, people used egg whites before salmonella was an issue with eggs. So you would whip the confectioner's sugar with egg whites, but now we're going to use meringue powder, which is safe to eat without worrying about salmonella. So this is Wilton's meringue powder. For every pound of confectioner's sugar, I'm going to use 3 tablespoons of meringue powder and 5 tablespoons of water. This is going to be a large gingerbread house, so I'm going to use 2 pounds of confectioner's sugar, and I'm going to sift it into this bowl. And everything that I've ever read about making confectioner's sugar, or using egg whites really for anything, it always emphasizes make sure that your bowl is grease-free. Now, I don't know who uses greasy bowls. I never have, but I'm going to relay this information to you. Make sure that your bowl is not greasy, because apparently egg whites don't whip well in the presence of grease. So I'm going to take this and sift it using just a sieve here. If you have a sifter, you can use that. But I'm going to sift this into the bowl, and then I'll put it on the mixer, and I'm going to move the camera so that you can see what the consistency of the icing looks like as it whips. When you make royal icing, you might think that you use a whip, but you don't. You use a flat beater. And it takes between 7 and 12 minutes to get to the consistency that we want. We're going to want this pretty thick for the part where we're going to actually do the construction of the house. And then we can thin it down with a little additional water to do some of the fine decorations. And that's also, you can thin it down with water, and you can put food coloring in it and decorate your cookies. It's not the tastiest frosting, but it's pretty and it's durable. So I'm going to start sifting this, and then we'll come back and focus in on the mixer as we go. So I'm going to start incorporating the water into this. As you can see, there's quite a bit of sugar in here. Ordinarily, I would put a cover on this like this to prevent it from getting everywhere, but I want you to be able to see what it looks like. So I'm going to see how this goes, and I'm going to do this kind of slowly. So I'm going to add, because this is a double recipe, I'm going to add 10 tablespoons of water. I had sifted with just a colander, a strainer, 2 pounds of confectioner's sugar and 6 tablespoons of meringue powder. I sifted them together into this bowl. I'm going to add 10 tablespoons of water, and then we're going to mix this until we get stiff peaks. So this is what it looks like when you take it, when it's mixed. It's pretty thick. And this is going to be the mortar that's going to hold our gingerbread house together. Now I'm going to put this into piping bags right away. If you don't use this immediately, you want to take a damp towel and put it over the mixer bowl so that you don't so it doesn't dry out, because it does. That's the whole point of this, is that it dries quickly and it dries hard, and that's not ideal in the bowl. So to fill the piping bags to decorate, I use these large piping bags. Wilton's makes smaller ones. If you have a reusable one, you can use that. If you don't have either of these, a Ziploc bag will work pretty well too. So to use these, if you have the tips, you take this tip and you put this inside the bag. And then you put your tip on here and you cinch it down with this. So obviously when you go to use it, you need this tip cut off. But for right now, I'm going to leave this like this so that the frosting doesn't come out. I find that it's easiest to fill these by putting them over a glass, opening that up like that. And you don't want to overfill this bag. You want it to be enough that it's comfortable to hold in your hand. And this icing is quite stiff. It's almost like a marshmallow consistency. And this is the part of the frosting that's going to hold the house together. Some more of the frosting that's in here I'm going to thin down to do the decorating. So I'm going to pull this up, and I'm going to do one more of these. If it turns out that this is too much, then later on I can pull it out and thin it down. You want to make sure you scrape down the sides of this bowl, because they're going to start to dry faster than the rest. I'm going to just pour it down, push it down in here. If I used a softer frosting, a more runny frosting, sometimes I take a rubber band and cinch it closed right over here so that it doesn't open back up. So I'm going to put this fitting on here, cinch it down with the threaded piece. And this one, just going to fold that over and hold it off to the side. And then the frosting that's left in the bowl, I'm going to scrape the sides down, and then I'm going to put a damp cloth over this so that it doesn't dry out, because later on I'm going to be adding a little bit of water to this to thin it down for the decorations on the sides of the house. I'm getting ready to decorate the sides before I put them on, before I do the outside of the house. So I just want to show you, I added a little bit more water to this frosting, and I'm going to kind of show you the consistency that I'm looking for. I still want it to be quite thick, but I want it to be able to pipe through that bag and make the decorations on the sides. So that's about what I'm looking for there. So I probably added another 2 or 3 tablespoons of water to this amount of frosting. Well, I'm getting ready to decorate the sides. I'm going to kind of show you, these are some of the decors that I'm using. There's Starlight Mints. These are just Spangler's candy canes. Hershey's Kisses in different colors. These are snow caps. They're kind of a cheap version of nonpareils. I have Dots candies. Gumdrops work really well. I didn't see the colorful gumdrops this year. These are just some little Wilton sprinkles, and these are red decors. Red Hots would work just as well, though. And I have the frosting that I have thinned down a little bit. And I have this on a Lazy Susan so that it's easier to move around for the camera. Usually I wouldn't do this. So I'm just going to do some decorating. I'm going to get kind of a fancier tip here. That's the nice thing about these, is that you can remove the tips and change them as you need to. So I'm going to do some decorating. If you're not used to this, you can practice it on a piece of aluminum foil. I usually squeeze with the hand that's at the back of the bag and guide it with the hand that's near the tip. Then I'm going to take some of these Red Hots. This is just the way that I like to do it. You decorate it the way that you like. And if you want to, you can take some acetate on the back side and glue that on, and then you could actually have real windows on here. I'm not going to do that this time. And I'll do a little bit more decorating later when it's on. But so this frosting is softer, so this would not be suitable for holding the house together. That's what the thicker frosting is for. I'm just going to do some simple decorations on here. And I'm going to let those dry for a little bit. I'm going to do a little bit of decorating on the front of the house. People have a plan when they start this. I usually don't. I just kind of go with how the spirit moves me, and sometimes they come out better than others. Generally appreciated either way, though. So even though this frosting is pretty soft right now, once the air hits it for a while, it's going to dry pretty firm. And I'm going to put a smaller tip on here. Kind of make it look like lights. gingerbread houses will hold up for quite a while. You can, you know, I would cover them at night, but we've had them at our center for a month and still eating them. And they were fine. Okay, so I'm going to move this one down, and then this is the back. And usually on the back I'll write something, you know, Happy Holidays or Merry Christmas or, you know, whatever. Make sure that you leave enough room though, because you're going to be frosting on the edges there. So I'm going to say not the best job, but at least I didn't spell anything wrong. And we'll do some more decorating on this once it's put together. Put some more of these colorful things on here. So you can see that I smushed that a little bit over there. I can, in a moment, go back over that and kind of do a little repair job on it. All right, I'm going to let them dry for a couple of minutes and then we'll put the house together. So now we come to the part that is fraught with danger, putting it together. And if you have 4 hands, that's good. If you have 2 hands, then you can bring in some of your reinforcements in the way of canned goods. So I have the frosting here that is, this is the semi-thick. This is the thinned out one that we use for the decorations. And then I have one that's very thick, and that's what I'm going to use for the sides and the front and back. So this is very difficult really to pipe out, so I'm going to make a line there the size of this piece. And I'm going to, because I don't actually have 4 hands, I'm going to put a can here. And then I'm going to kind of eyeball this, but kind of check. So I want to go about to that distance there. And this is the thickest frosting. So this is the most cement-like of the pieces. And I'm going to put this like this. This is danger, danger, Will Robinson territory here. If it's going to go bad, this is where it will happen. So I'm going to pivot this around with actually this Lazy Susan thing. It's not a bad idea. I'm going to mortar in pieces. You know what? I'm going to go in with a slightly wetter one because it's just really tough to fill in that gap. Okay, so I don't know if you can see here. There was a little bit of a gap here. We're going to let this dry, and then I'm going to reinforce this in the front too. So I want to make sure that these are at a 90-degree angle, because if they're not, it's not going to go together right. So if you are a planner, not a bad idea to maybe make a little indentation on the aluminum foil in the first place. That would have been a good idea. Okay. upside down. And I'm kind of planting it in there. Oops, that guy's coming apart there. Alrighty then. It does not always go perfectly the first rundown. Okay. Gonna let that dry a bit. You can probably see that there's a gap right here. Later on, I'm going to be able to fill that gap with frosting, so I'm not too worried about that right now. I'm going to put that can there to stabilize that. I have a can on the outside here to stabilize. And I'm just going to check to make sure that this is going to fit properly, because if I need to adjust a little bit, this is the time that I have to do that. Okay. And you want to get this right before it dries, because after it dries, it's too late. Not 100% too late, but it's better if you can get it right in the first place, obviously. So in this one, I'm going to go up the sides. And I'm going to leave a little space for that door there. And phase one was largely without disaster. I'm counting that as a win. We're going to let this dry for a few minutes before we go any farther, because we don't want the roof to come down. So we want to make sure that that's nice and dry before we start putting the roof on. I'm just reinforcing this a little bit. I don't really care too much what it looks like on the inside, but I definitely want this to be well attached. And if you want to, you can take a damp big finger and smooth out this inside. All right, we'll give that a few minutes. Okay, well the sides are pretty sturdy now. They've dried for about 15 minutes. I'm going to start to put the roof on. This is another dangerous part of it. So I'm going to put some mortar on here. So there's really not a lot I can do in the way of supporting this, except to stand around and hold it. And that's what I'm going to do for a minute. So I'm going to put this on. The roof pieces are about 1/4 of an inch longer than the sides, to give just a little bit of overhang. And I'm going to hold this for a minute or two, because until it sets, it's liable to slowly slide down, and we don't want that. So give this a minute or two, and then I'm going to do the other side. It looks like it's staying, but don't be fooled. It's possible that that's going to slide. I'm going to keep my eye. So this is my only chance to get in here and reinforce, and I don't get that option on the other side. Continue mortaring, and I'm going to put a little bit more frosting on this side because I don't get that extra shot from the inside. And I'm also going to put some across the top too. Okay. And let's all cross our fingers. If you got a little prayer that you want to say for me, this is the time. Well, so far, so good. A little bit. And before we decorate this, I'm going to let it dry a little bit. It's going to go in here. Do this along the back too. As long as we have the Lazy Susan, I'll show you what I'm doing. Okay, that's looking pretty good. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these peppermint sticks on the side here now. I'm going to do some more decorating around there, so I'm not too concerned that it's not 100% gorgeous. Okay, so far we're looking pretty good. And this is still a little wet, so this is a good time to put some kinds of decorations in this. Just going to put these little nonpareils. And you can use absolutely anything that you can lay your hands on. Any kind of candy is perfect for gingerbread. And before I decorate the roof pieces, I'm going to put the chimney on. And so of course I want the chimney to be sort of towards the rear. And we'll put the door on too. The door is going to be ajar over here. I know I said it was going to be a door, but now I said it's ajar. And now I have to make up my mind. So, let's see. You can cover up a multitude of sins by just pretending you have a snowy roof. Take a wet finger and kind of clean up some of this messy stuff. In fact, what I'll do is just cover this up with white frosting entirely and just pretend that it's snowy. Get an offset spatula. Okay. So then we're going to attach the door. Before I do that, make a little wreath. Try to find the green ones. Now, so after we got the Starlight Mints on, I'm gonna put little dabs on here. Little red dots. These candies are little candies called dots that are very sticky. Sure, they're not dentist approved at all. Right, we're getting down to the wire on these. I have these Hershey's Kisses. I'm going to throw some inside. Let's see. Could do a little bit more decorating over here, because why not? This is where if you need to do a little extra reinforcing, you can use some of this thicker frosting. And a couple of last minute touches. Get this back. We're almost there. I think we're gonna call it a day. So here you go. This is a gingerbread from start to finish, gingerbread house. You can embellish it more or less according to your tastes, and I hope that you enjoyed the video, and I hope that you'll give it a try. So we've made our gingerbread house. We took a little time and decorated some of the extra cookie dough with, we made them into gingerbread boys and girls, and we decorated them with the leftover frosting and some of the extra little bits of candies that we had left. Those will be a nice addition to this. And this is the house that we made. And I'm going to turn it around on the Lazy Susan so you can get a good view of all of it. So whatever holiday you celebrate, I hope that it's a joyous one and one that is the harbinger of a new year full of good things and less disease. So happy holidays to everybody. Enjoy the gingerbread and enjoy your holidays and be well.